Now, welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Well, as you all know, we have an election coming up. And it looks like that election may be very chaotic. One of the candidates, who is now the President of the United States, is doing his best to create a chaotic election. And in spite of the fact that we may not want such an election, we're very likely to have one. So let's consider a scenario in which we have Donald Trump, who comes reasonably close to winning. Say he's within 4 points of the popular vote or something like that. And the Electoral College is actually reasonably close. That's the scenario which is addressed in a recent article by Robert Kuttner, done for the American Prospect, and the article is called "The Decider: How John Roberts Will Rid the Country of Trump." The article was done on September 1st, 2020. And Kuttner says he doesn't think we're going to know the winner of the election, on election night. And he mentions voter suppression by the Republicans and Trump and the Republicans challenging the results in swing states that Biden appears to have won. There are a number of scenarios that are possible, but they basically boil down to one, says Kuttner. And he points to at least 4 swing states where this is possible. In Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Democrats have the governor, but Republicans control the legislature. The Constitution of the United States gives the states the authority to pick the winning electors of the Electoral College, but the Constitution doesn't specify how this should be done. So it could be done by the legislature, it could be done by the governor, it could be done by a combination of the two. It's up to the state. In this scenario, a divided Congress is unable to decide between the competing slates, and thus, says Kuttner, no candidate has a majority of electors. And then he points out that the 12th Amendment to the Constitution would apply in this situation. It provides that if there's no electoral majority, the House of Representatives shall choose the next president, with each state delegation having 1 vote. This has happened twice before. After the elections of 1800, when, of course, Thomas Jefferson was chosen as the President of the United States, and 1824, when John Quincy Adams was chosen over Andrew Jackson as the President of the United States. Kuttner points out that though the Democrats, of course, have a majority of House seats, the Republicans dominate the small states and have a majority of state delegations. Thus, Trump wins, most probably. Then Kuttner points out such a scenario was narrowly avoided in 1877 when different government bodies in 3 southern states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, where black voting was repressed, sent forward 2 competing slates of electors. And so Hayes and Samuel Tilden were deadlocked until almost Inauguration Day, at which point a deal was struck whereby the Republican, but namely Rutherford B. Hayes, was allowed to steal the election from the Reform Democrat Samuel Tilden on condition that Hayes would end Reconstruction in the South. If competing slates of electors are still causing the process to deadlock next January, no such deal is likely, and the election goes to the House. So is there anything to prevent Trump from carrying out this scheme? So now Kuttner goes to John Roberts. I want to add here that we don't know how the election is going to turn out. If there's a deadlock that continues into January, the new Congress will be in session. At this point, we do not know. It seems likely the Republicans will still have a majority of states controlled by their congressional delegations. But they may not. If there's enough of a sweep, against the Republicans in the House this time, if the Democrats add another 40 to 50 seats in the House, will the Republicans still have a majority of the delegations from each state to the Congress? I don't know. That's not considered. I haven't been able to go through scenarios to determine whether this is going to happen, so I'm just going to raise the question. It may happen, and if it does happen, the Democrats then have control. It still might be the selection of Biden that we see without the Supreme Court actually intervening. But Kuttner, on the assumption the Republicans still have a majority of the state delegations, he says, enter the Supreme Court. He says, I wrote about Chief Justice John Roberts' possible involvement last June, but recent disclosures of Republican strategy make the dynamics of the endgame and the court's inevitable role even clearer. In the weeks after the election, there are likely to be proliferating lawsuits from different players in different states. The Supreme Court, mindful of two key dates, December 8th, when all court challenges must be resolved, and December 14th, when the electors meet, will very likely expedite a review of those cases. In the disputed election of 2000, the High Court stopped the clock on the Florida recount on December 12th and called the state for George W. Bush because of these looming deadlines. So it is likely, I think Kuttner's right about this, so it is likely the court will resolve the question of who won which state well before the deadlocked electoral college kicks in. Having done so, I think he's right about that. Having done so in 2000, the court can do it again. We're probably talking about fewer than 7 states, each with different particulars. The rest will be either clearly for Biden or for Trump. At this point, gentle reader, it makes me a bit queasy to bet the future of the Republic on one John Roberts. But stay with me. Then Kuttner points out that if the election is very close, we're doomed. He thinks then Trump will steal it, that the court will decide in favor of Trump. But he says, but if Biden appears to have won by a healthy margin, let's say 4 points or more in the key swing states, then it is highly unlikely that even the Roberts Court will collude in a flagrant electoral theft. For starters, Roberts plainly doesn't like Trump or his dictatorial maneuvers. He's been willing to vote against the administration position in several key cases. Roberts also has the integrity of the court as an institution to consider. I might say the perceived integrity of the court. I don't think that the court has much integrity as an institution, but certainly there is a perceived integrity or perception about the court, and he does have the perception of the court, okay, to consider, specifically the perception that the court is not blatantly going to allow the election to be stolen. Anyway, going on, it was easier for the court to take a partisan dive in Bush v. Gore because the Florida election was genuinely close, muddled by mishaps, and because Gore had effectively conceded defeat. So Kuttner says, here's my wager. If Biden wins decisively on the exit polls, and if the details of post-election legal efforts reveal all manner of Republican chicanery, the Supreme Court is not likely to conspire in a theft, for it isn't just the theft of an election, but the theft of what's left of the American democracy. Roberts has to know that. Indeed, if those circumstances obtain a clear Biden win and clear Republican fraud, I think it could well be a series of 7-2 votes, with Roberts bringing along Trump's two appointees and only Alito and Thomas voting as pure partisan hacks. I don't know if I agree with that. It seems to me Gorsuch is much more of a partisan hack than Alito. Alito is pretty much partisan hack too. And Kavanaugh seems to me to be a partisan hack as well. But maybe Kuttner knows something I don't, and maybe he thinks that Roberts' influence with Kavanaugh and Gorsuch will move them. He will argue, of course, John Roberts will, that it's better for the court and for the perception of the integrity of the court that these be 7-2 decisions rather than 5-4 decisions. That those 5-4 decisions might look too partisan instead of Roberts, the Chief Justice, going over to the other side. It might still look too partisan. So he might be able to prevail on some of the others, specifically Gorsuch and also Kavanaugh, to come over with him. So he might be right about the 7-2. Though I can't see why Sam Alito is considered more partisan than Gorsuch or Kavanaugh. Now, Thomas, I agree, he's totally, purely partisan hack. But going further, the Republicans can fulminate and argue the Constitution provides that only Congress shall recognize electors. But the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of what the Constitution actually means. And the court already has the precedent of Bush v. Gore establishing its right to call a winner, as well as its institutional need to insist on its prerogatives. This is a good point. But of course, in the Bush v. Gore decision, the court said explicitly that this decision was not to be taken as precedent for anything in the future, that it was a one-off. So, of course, the court can take it as precedent if it wants to. The present court can take it as precedent. But the earlier court protested that it should not be taken as precedent. So maybe it's not so clear what they will do. But anyway, it does have the institutional need to insist on its prerogatives, and it may well do that. So Kuttner then ends by saying, we had just better hope that Biden's win is decisive. And there I want to introduce the further point that the way Biden is running the campaign, the stupid way Biden is running the campaign, seems to evince a desire to keep things close. He won't do the things he needs to do to have a runaway. So Trump still has a chance. The latest thing with former Governor Snyder of Michigan endorsing Biden and Biden's campaign welcoming the endorsement. I mean, that move is designed to cost Biden the state of Michigan. What a moron. What a moron. There are enough votes in Flint alone, perhaps, to swing the election to Donald Trump. Does Biden really think that Snyder's endorsement is going to get him enough of the votes of the Republicans in Michigan to outweigh the votes in Flint that he's likely to lose? Come on. Only the latest in Biden's stupid moves. He needs to renounce his position on trade. He needs to renounce his position on Medicare for all. And he needs to come out squarely for the Green New Deal and free college. As I've said, Kane, another short take. He needs to quit being too stubborn to win the presidency. We need this to be a big victory, not a marginal thing. And on that note, I'm going to end this short take. I'll see you soon with another one. Bye.